There's a moment that arrives quietly, almost like a photograph developing in your mind, when someone mentions something from years ago and you remember it perfectly. Not just the event, but the details. The weather that day, the shirt they were wearing, the exact words they said, and you watch their face change when they realize you remember what they've long forgotten. And in that moment, you see it, the discomfort, the question behind their eyes. Why do you still remember that? You've probably felt it, that weight of carrying memories that everyone else has released. Small moments that meant nothing to them, but everything to you. Conversations they had and forgot, promises they made and moved past. And you're left holding all of it. A library of moments that no one else bothered to keep. People who never forget aren't trying to hold grudges. They're not keeping score to punish anyone. They just can't help it. Their minds work differently. They notice everything. They file it away. And unlike most people, they can't seem to delete anything. Every hurt, every kindness, every detail, it all stays. There's a psychology behind this that runs deeper than memory. Because people who never forget aren't just remembering facts, they're remembering feelings. The way something made them feel in that moment becomes attached to the memory so strongly that recalling one brings back the other. And that's what makes it so heavy. They're not just carrying what happened, they're carrying how it felt. Over and over, every time the memory surfaces. Psychologists call this emotional memory encoding. It's the brain's way of marking certain experiences as significant. And for people who never forget, almost everything gets marked. Not because they choose it, but because their nervous system decided long ago that remembering was safer than forgetting. That storing information meant being prepared. That nothing could hurt them if they never let their guard down. Most people who never forget developed this trait early, in environments where paying attention mattered, where missing a detail meant consequences, where reading the room, remembering patterns, and staying vigilant was how they survived. Maybe it was a parent whose mood could shift without warning. Maybe it was instability that required constant tracking. Maybe it was betrayal that taught them to never fully trust again. Whatever the origin, their brain learned something fundamental. Forgetting is dangerous, so they remember everything. As insurance, as protection, as proof that they're not imagining things when the world tries to tell them they are. And over time, that survival skill becomes a burden. Because the brain doesn't distinguish between what's worth remembering and what should be let go. It just remembers everything. The good, the bad, the insignificant moments that everyone else discarded. And the person carrying all of it starts to wonder why they can't be like everyone else, why they can't just move on. There's a particular loneliness that comes with never forgetting, because you remember things about people that they don't remember about themselves. You remember the version of them they've outgrown, the things they said when they were hurting, the promises they made when they meant them, and when they change, when they contradict themselves, when they rewrite their own history, you're the only one who notices, the only one who remembers what really said, what really happened. And that knowledge isolates you, because bringing it up makes you seem petty. Holding on to it makes you seem unforgiving. So you stay quiet. You let them rewrite their story. You let them forget, but you can't. And that gap between what you remember and what they've let go of becomes a canyon you can't cross. People who never forget often have something in common. Hypervigilance. It's a state where your brain is always scanning for threats, always processing information, always preparing for what might go wrong. And memory is part of that system, because if you remember every time someone hurt you, every time someone let you down, every time something went wrong, you can protect yourself from it happening again. But here's the cost. You also remember every kind gesture, every gentle word, every moment of connection. And those memories become bittersweet because you know how easily people forget, how quickly kindness can be replaced with distance, how fast promises turn into vapor. So even the good memories carry weight because they're proof of something that might not last. There's a strange thing that happens when you never forget. People start to fear you a little, not because you're threatening, but because you hold their history. You're a mirror that reflects back things they'd rather not see, mistakes they've moved past, versions of themselves they've buried. And your presence becomes a reminder that they can't fully escape who they were, so they distance themselves. Not always consciously, but they stop being as open. They edit themselves around you because they know you'll remember. And remembering, to them, feels like judgment, even when it's not. I remember the first time I realized my memory made people uncomfortable. I mentioned something from years before, something small, something I thought was just a normal part of our shared history, and the person looked at me like I'd done something wrong, like my remembering was an accusation. And they said, "I can't believe you still remember that." Not with warmth, with something else, unease, maybe guilt, maybe discomfort that I was holding on to something they'd released. And that's when I understood. My memory wasn't just mine, it was evidence. And people don't like being reminded of who they used to be, especially when they're trying to be someone new.
If you're someone who never forgets, you know this feeling. That strange position of being the keeper of everyone else's history while they get to start fresh. And the exhaustion of carrying that alone, of being the only one who remembers, the only one who noticed. The hardest part about never forgetting is that people expect you to. They expect you to let go, to move on, to forgive and forget, like the saying goes. But you can forgive and still remember. Those aren't the same thing. Forgiveness is about releasing resentment. Memory is about holding truth. And just because you remember what happened doesn't mean you're holding a grudge. It just means you're being honest about what was real. But people conflate the two. They think if you remember, you haven't forgiven. If you bring it up, you're stuck in the past. If you haven't forgotten, you're bitter. And that assumption is exhausting because it asks you to perform amnesia to prove you've healed, to erase your own history to make others comfortable. Here's what most people don't understand about those who never forget. They're not trying to punish anyone. They're not weaponizing memory. They're just living with a mind that won't let go. And that's not a choice. It's how they're wired. Their brain holds on to things, indexes them, files them, and every time something similar happens, the old memory resurfaces, not as revenge, as pattern recognition. Because people who never forget aren't just remembering isolated moments. They're seeing connections, themes, repeated behaviors. And that awareness, while painful, is also a gift. It means they see the truth faster than others. They recognize red flags earlier. They don't get fooled twice because they remember the first time. Psychologists talk about something called memory burden. It's the emotional weight of holding on to traumatic or significant memories that won't fade. And for people who never forget, that burden is constant. They can't selectively delete. They can't choose what to keep and what to release. Everything stays. And that permanence shapes how they move through the world, carefully, cautiously, always aware of what was, always bracing for what might be. But there's another side to never forgetting that people rarely talk about: the beauty of it. Because yes, you remember pain, but you also remember joy. You remember small kindnesses that meant everything, quiet moments that others overlooked, conversations that changed you. And while everyone else lets those moments slip away, you hold them. You carry proof that beauty existed, that connection was real, that you were seen, even briefly. And sometimes that's enough, knowing that even if the world forgets, you don't. That the people who touched your life left a mark, and that mark stays, not as a scar, as evidence that you were here, that they were here, that it mattered. So what do you do when you're someone who never forgets? When your mind refuses to release what everyone else has moved past? You learn to carry it differently, not as a weapon, not as proof of who wronged you, but as information, as truth, as the reality of what was. You stop expecting others to remember with you. You stop waiting for them to acknowledge what they've forgotten. You accept that your memory is yours alone. And that's okay. You don't need their validation to trust what you know. You don't need their agreement to hold on to truth. And here's the shift that matters. You start using your memory not to stay stuck, but to move forward. You remember what hurt you so you can avoid it. You remember what healed you so you can seek it. You remember patterns so you can choose differently. You remember who showed up so you know who to keep close. Your memory becomes less about the past and more about building a future where you are protected, where you are wiser, where you don't repeat the same mistakes because you remember the lessons clearly. People who never forget aren't broken. They're not damaged. They're just wired to hold on to information that others release. And that wiring, while heavy, is also a form of loyalty to themselves, to the truth, to the belief that what happened mattered, even if no one else remembers, even if everyone else has moved on. You're allowed to remember. You're allowed to hold on to what was real. You're allowed to trust your memory, even when others question it. Because your mind isn't lying to you. It's just being honest in a world that prefers to forget. And maybe the most powerful thing about people who never forget is this: they become witnesses to their own lives, to the lives of others, to moments that would otherwise disappear. They're proof that things happened, that words were said, that actions had consequences. And in a world that's constantly rewriting itself, that matters. You are the keeper of your own history, and that's not a burden. That's a responsibility to remember honestly, to hold truth carefully, and to use what you remember to build something better than what was. You don't have to forget to heal. You just have to learn to carry memory without letting it crush you, to hold the past without letting it define your future, to remember everything while still choosing to move forward. Because people who never forget don't have to live in the past. They just bring it with them as wisdom, as warning, as proof that they survived. And that survival, memory and all, is its own kind of strength.